Welcome to the Be Battle Ready podcast, where we take a deep dive into what it takes to be battle ready in your lifestyle so that you can go to war on your life and the marketplace and win.
All right. So we'll get started.
All right.
Welcome to the Be Battle Ready podcast. Today I am super pumped. I have to say, they keep me busy. Jessica Rhodes with Interview Connections. If you're looking for, to get put on podcasts and get your message out to the marketplace, to the world, to the people who need you, this is the company, this is the rock star that you need to talk to. And I'm super excited to bring her on. So welcome on.
Hey, Anthony, thank you so much for having me on the show. And thank you for interviewing several of our clients and including myself. I'm excited to be here.
I mean, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have as many friends now. My friends have grown, my network and everything.
I love it.
So yeah. Well, thanks. I appreciate the support and I love what you guys do. And, I'm super excited to dive into this. So
awesome.
Can you just give us a little bit of background about where you come from, like how you got to where you're at now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my business in 2013 when I had my first child. And that was really my motivation, was I wanted to be at home with my baby. I was 25 at the time, and I had just left basically the only real job I had as an adult. I worked for a nonprofit organization, managing their door-to-door field canvas. So essentially I was in door-to-door sales, except instead of selling something, we were fundraising. So that was really, I got my start in sales, like hardcore, knocking on people's houses when they were not expecting you and getting donations. So that was really my background. And then I went to start my business to be a stay-at-home, work-at-home mom. And then one of the tasks that I was doing as a virtual assistant, because I really just started like, I'll just do whatever, and my dad was my first client because he's a business owner and a business coach. And so I was doing work for him, and booking podcast interviews was one of those first things that I was doing as a virtual assistant, as an entrepreneur. And so that was really the start of it, because when I kind of got bit by that entrepreneurial bug and realized I wanted to do more than just like send people an invoice for the 12 hours I worked for them that month, I was like, okay, I'm going to create a business called Interview Connections. Obviously there's more to it than that, but I'm like, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
My dad was my business coach at the time. So he really helped me come up with the idea. And I had, conversations with people in the market of like, would you buy this service? Is this needed? Because there was nobody doing it at that time. Yeah. And now it's like, you can't look left or right without seeing an ad of like, get you booked on podcasts.
Yeah.
But back in the day in 2013, like this was totally new. And so I was like, I'm going to capitalize on this because number one, it's just really fun. Like you said, you wouldn't have nearly as many friends.
Yeah, I know.
But like people walk away from interviews and they have so much fun. And it's not just like running an ad or doing a commercial. It's like people walk away with real relationships. So it was really, really fun to kind of be that like matchmaker for business owners.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, talking about connecting people, I mean, I got to interview the founder of Active Campaign because due to your service. And it's like, I mean, it was an amazing experience because I got to talk to somebody that was before the internet bubble, that's been around and in the same business. And it was great. It's great to see like the type of person and learn that person, because that's part of my passions is studying, what makes people more effective and, really excel in business, not just inside the business, but in themselves too. So see what that person's like. So.
Yeah. And these entrepreneurs, these founders see real value in going on podcasts like yours and sharing their story and providing value and expertise because, I mean, speaking of, sales and marketing, obviously there's a lot of different aspects of sales and marketing, whether it's like content marketing and running ads, like, businesses do require a lot of different tactics. But with podcast interviews, you can really have a pretty significant impact on individual people. So for somebody listening to a 30 to 60 minute podcast interview, they're going to remember that person so much more than if they just saw their ad for 15 seconds on an Instagram story.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it gives you an opportunity to hit those three pays. The three biggest things that you need as a marketer is to know, like, and trust you. Mm-hmm. And within one, 20, 30 minutes, they can understand you, connect with your story. And I really love that.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, quick question. You mentioned
Yeah.
going from your only job into your own business. Like, talk to us about the trials, the tribulations, the things that you went through, because a lot of people, that's the dream, right? To go from working for somebody into their own business. And, talk to us about that. Like, what were the ups? What were the downs? Like,
Yeah. So, I mean, like the first thing that comes to mind that I really want to share is just the importance of having a support system. Like for me, it was having a husband that was really, supportive. And, he is a lawyer now and he worked for a nonprofit at the time. And so it's not like I don't mean like I had a supportive husband and he made so much money. Like we did not make a lot of money. And that was like one of the, the kind of the challenging aspects to it is like, we built up a very, very modest savings that we went through probably in like 6 months. So that like the financial aspect was definitely probably the most challenging, getting the business up and running, reaching those points where you're like, okay, I want to go to this conference because I know I can make good connections and get clients. But in order to buy this ticket and get this plane ticket and, stay at a hotel, like, you're just looking at the bank account and you're like, well, I'll put it on my Discover, and I'm not like a personal finance person. So I've like whatever people want to do with credit cards, but I know for me, like I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't get in debt, which was, they say like everything happens for a reason. Like I got in some pretty big debt, like a lot. And there was a point a few years ago where I was like, holy crap. Like I looked at the total and I was like, okay, I need to really do something about this, and like I paid it off in an incredibly short amount of time because it just takes that discipline and that focus and actually getting into the numbers, because I think that's a mistake a lot of business owners make is they don't think about the numbers. They think about the marketing and the sales and the creative freedom and all this, but then they see their P&L or they don't even have one. And then they get really, really stuck. They've got no profit. They've got a ton of debt. And they're like, but this is my revenue. But it's like, but you don't have any profit. So what are you doing?
Yeah.
So I think that's like really, really important is to really get into your numbers and if you feel like you're the type of person that's not good with the numbers, because I get that. I used to feel like that. You need to have a breakthrough in that this is like 3rd grade math level. You just need to learn how to like add and subtract and like analyze what you're spending and what is actually producing a return on your investment.
Yeah. I mean, my first business coaches, and one of the first things he had us do and drilled down and actually canceled an appointment with me because I wasn't ready with my numbers is recording a daily numbers spreadsheet. Mm-hmm. And, from here, and what that taught me is to actually beyond just P&L, right? Like we were tracking like marketing numbers, current client service numbers, all these different things. And like knowing how to read that of drilling that in my head. And, it's very important. The other thing is, I think a lot of, the mindset of small business, when you get started, you're trying to save, right? You're trying to you think you need to save, you don't need to go into debt, but, the value of having a bookkeeper, someone doing it for you, like, especially like I would even recommend bookkeepers having their own bookers. This is the outside eye,
I completely agree with that. I remember hearing a lot, like you can't save your way out of debt, and it's a balance. Like we went through Dave Ramsey's Money Makeover book, and that's kind of how like personally we had a breakthrough in like paying down a lot of debt and getting a lot better with money personally. But you do need to be really disciplined about what you're spending money on, and in your business, like you need to invest. Like you need to actually what do they say? Like spend money to make money. And not frivolously. Like you actually do need to think about like, will I get a return on this? So like in the early days, there's certain strategies, like long-term strategies that aren't going to produce a financial return for a while. Like, and I really think that podcasting is one of those strategies, which I will typically not recommend this to entrepreneurs until they're at kind of the low multiple six-figure mark, because until you get to at least probably 200,000 a year in revenue, you likely are not at the point where you can put money out and wait at least 6 months to a year to see a return, which with podcasting, that's typically what it takes. You've got to wait a long time, whether you're guesting on shows and you need to wait for those shows to go live and people to hear you, or you're hosting a podcast and you're paying a producer and an editor and you're getting it up and you're, promoting it and you're building that audience. If you got 50 listeners and then 100 listeners, and it's like, well, these people start buying something. So it really takes time. So it's a super fun strategy, but there's certain things that you invest in because it's brand building and it's like going to produce future revenue. And then there's certain strategies where you're like, okay, if I go to this conference, like I know I can come home with a client that will pay me today, this week.
Yeah. I mean, I was on a call with, a potential coaching client, and he was like, he's a client acquisition type, agency for realtors. And he was really talking about like, well, why I don't see my point in spending money in advertising or marketing right now. What I have is working to get my clients. And I'm like, look, you can't look at it as a direct ROI, because marketing and brand building is building your asset, right? Like, you could just transact all the time, but if you don't invest in that asset so people know, like, trust, and come to you for what you do, you're not going to have a sustainable business.
Right. And I love that. And that's something that we really believe in, is that building that thought leadership, because when you put content out, when you do podcasting, when you do content marketing, when you're on social media, leads come to you warm and ready to buy. So that's interesting to hear what your client said, because it is important to get out there and producing content, because when you're only working from cold, like transactional, like sales consultations, and people don't know you yet, it's super hard to really like inspire them in what you can do for them in a 30-minute call. But when they come saying, I've been listening to your pod, like I remember one of my best clients came to me and said on our initial sales consultation call, I listened to every single episode of your podcast. And I was just like, this is going to go well. So, yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, kind of what you said earlier, like, I just want to go back to the concept of just make this point. And you can probably attest to this, is that what the Dave Ramsey, and I took his course, or we went to our church, took his course. Completely, I agree with what he's talking about, but it's not really tailored. That mindset isn't really the best for an entrepreneur, right? To think that way. And can you provide some insight on, since you've been on both sides of that?
Yeah. Yes, it's a balance, I think, So I think what we learned, like my husband and I got from Money Makeover, was like being really disciplined. And at first, several years ago, when we looked and realized, well, not like just we realized, but we really confronted the fact that we had a lot of credit card debt and we needed to like stop that slippery slope of like not paying attention. It's like, okay, what do you not need to spend money on? And even to this day, my business partner and I are like, we're growing our business really successfully, but we still will kind of joke like #Money Makeover. Like, do we really need this software that nobody's logged into in 3 months? Cancel it. Like maybe it's $12 a month, but it's not really producing that return. So I think it is important as a business to still look at your P&L like that. Like there are a lot of little subscriptions and stuff that you end up subscribing to as a business. You're like, oh, this is a cool thing. This is going to help me. But really looking and saying like, am I actually using this? Like, is this worth my time? But I do, like, I agree with what you're saying too. You can't run a business. I mean, I'll just speak from my experience, because I'm sure there's someone out there that can, but I think that you do need to invest, and it's difficult to really aggressively grow a business if you're not willing to maybe use a little bit of debt. I don't know. Maybe there's going to be a personal finance person that comes after me, but that's just been my experience, is like, there's certain things that we've invested in that we didn't have the cash for, but 100% produced a return on our investment. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, I mean, I get what he's saying. I understand where he's at. And for the majority of the population, yes. But, I mean, come on, every corporation in the world, there's very, 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 very few people who've risen and become successful and wealthy without utilizing debt. In the debt in this banks, or the debt in sense of selling off equity to investors.
Yeah. And I would also kind of, to take this maybe into like a mindset aspect, I think a lot of people, like, I know there are a lot of business owners, I've had business coaches that like are just totally like, they're bootstrapped, they operate in cash, they don't carry debt, which is obviously amazing. And they're like, that's like really working. I think there are a lot of business owners that are not willing to maybe use a little bit of debt to make an investment that's going to produce a return out of fear. And I think that's just a really important mindset check is like, are you making these decisions based off of fear of something, or are you seeing the possibility? Because to grow a business, you have to create possibilities, and you have to be optimistic, and you have to see potential in your business and in yourself. That's not fear of something that, may or may not happen,
Yeah, absolutely. And, looking at that, there's in the early stages, you are your business, right? Mm-hmm. But, and this is a big point that you probably understand that you felt, when you were doing the VA and that type of work, you were your business. And you realized like that wasn't sustainable. Like that was just some job you own, right? Or a job that owns you, that you can quit, but it's a little harder to quit than a regular job. Right. Yes. So, I personally, my values are, personally, on my personal finances, I will handle myself like Dave Ramsey. Mm-hmm. That's my intent. Right. But on the side of a business, because legal structures and all this other stuff, you can leverage the business, you can get lines of credit and things like that based off the business. So, it's two different aspects. So,
right. Yeah.
Very cool. So talk to us about some some challenging times that you had like early on getting this off the ground.
Yeah. So I started the business freelance. So it was just me. And then I built up a team of contractors. And that is the easiest thing to do when you're first building up a team. It's like, okay, I'll get another VA, a contractor. And that's just like, lickety split. You'll send me an invoice. I'll send you a 1099. Like it's all just easy. And then we reached a point in about 2017, in the beginning of 2017, I realized this business is growing. We're getting more clients, and I can't sustainably grow this business with only contractors, because so there's a couple different aspects to it. So with contractors, you can't schedule their hours. You can't control how they do what they do. They have to be able to provide that same service to other people. And so for me, I'm like, well, I don't want my bookers to go be booking for all my competitors. That. So there was a lot of reasons that I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I've built a labor model that is not going to work anymore. And so that was a very challenging time. So I hired my first employee, who actually is now my business partner. So she's co-owner. And we basically made that transition in 2017. We started hiring people in-house locally in Rhode Island. And as we would get their work, it was so interesting. And I'm telling you, this was the most challenging time in the business, because we would have our contractors working virtually. So they didn't necessarily see what was happening in the office building that we were renting now. And they were like, hey, Jess, I have more availability. I can take on more clients. And I'm like, oh, I don't have anyone for you. Meanwhile, I'm delegating clients to my employees. So it was a very delicate balance, because I couldn't afford to have a lapse in service. I couldn't just shut down the business for 2 months while I changed everything over. Yeah. So I had to, operate in integrity with my team, my new team, and my contractor team. But at the same time, I couldn't have my contractors all quit before I was ready, before I had all these employees. So that was a lot. It was crazy, but we had an HR contractor, HR specialist, who guided us through and made our employee handbook. And there was a lot of trial and error, knowing I was like, what do we pay people for this job? Number one, this job doesn't exist. A podcast booking agent, this is a new business, new industry. Number two, I'm like, I've been an entrepreneur for 3 years. I don't know what the going rate is for an hourly job. I'm an entrepreneur. I don't actually know if people get paid these days. Someone said, $50 an hour to be a barista. And I was like, really? I didn't know. I just once you're an entrepreneur, you don't know what the average pay is for
yeah.
So, we would start out paying something, and so it was crazy. It was absolutely crazy, but we got better, and we practiced, and we hired people. People didn't work out. They either quit or we fired them, and we found new people. And now we've got a really good team, but it took a while to figure that out. And also in my last job, I managed people. So I was like, oh, I know this. I know how to manage employees. But in my last job, there was a whole HR department that created all the systems to onboard people. And I realized we had to create all that from scratch. So
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been quite a journey.
So real quick, talking about the mindset, like,
Mm-hmm.
the mindset of going and taking on that new responsibility, because, there's a lot of layers there that, a lot of entrepreneurs, small business owners going from, I really love that you had the foresight and the courage to go ahead and build that fractional team with,
Mm-hmm.
I call it a fractional team with contractors,
Yeah.
but then that transition from contractors to actual, employees, because that is a completely different shift. And talked about like the growth that for you that happened. That's because I really think that people need to understand is the growth that in there.
So, I mean, it was a couple things. So I remember being at a conference and talking to a friend of mine named Michelle Prince, and I was sharing like part of my vision, was I really love, like, I'm an extrovert. I like being around people. And I really wanted, when I kind of looked at the future of this company, I'm like, I want to have everyone in one place, because we had people on Slack and stuff, and we would all get on Zoom and whatnot, but it really wasn't the same as like being able to quickly talk about something face to face in the office. And I just like kind of wanted that energy. But I was surrounded by online entrepreneurs. I was surrounded by like coaches and agency owners who had totally virtual teams. So I kind of felt like, this is an insane dream. Everyone's running, screaming from this vision. But I remember talking to my friend Michelle, and she was like, if that's what you want, do it. Like, do it. And so combined with like the fact that this is what I want, and then also seeing as the business was growing and I really needed that structure and that control, like just legally, I needed to make people employees so I could control them more.
Yeah.
But it was really just like taking that risk and just knowing like, okay, this seems to be different than from what everyone else around me is doing, but this is my path and this is what I want for the company and this is what I'm going to do. And there was a lot of that. And I remember by the end of 2017, when we finally like got all the employees on board and all the contractors were done, I was like down. Like I was burnt out, and I was, I felt really depressed. I was exhausted. Like I would come home from work at 5:00 and just sleep on the couch. Like it was rough. Like it was not a walk in the park. Yeah.
So I love that point, because did it feel like it was you were going through startup mode again?
Yes. It felt like I was starting a new business. And it was also like, I had this vision, right, of like having all these employees in the office and this energy and everything. And then I got that and I was like, okay, so what's next? Like there is sort of a mental crisis that happens when you have this vision and you get it and you're like, I'm not really happy with this, or like, this didn't like bring the joy that I thought it was going to bring. 'Cause now I just have all these people and they come in late sometimes and I've got to write them up and I've got to give them, respect. Like there was all this stuff where I'm like, crap, this is not what I envisioned. So then the next step of the story, 'cause I'm not like that anymore. So it's like, okay, what happened between then and now? So if it's okay, I'll just keep going with the story.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love the hearing about it.
Okay. So I don't want to hijack the show. But I made my first employee, Margie. I made her a business partner because we were talking a lot about some different business ideas and, going out to lunch and everything and just thinking like, oh, we could do this or we could do this. And I remember just being like, okay, she's an employee, but we're talking like in a very partnership way. So I made her co-owner, and then 2018 was like the year of personal growth and development and a lot of transformations. We went through the whole Landmark curriculum, which I highly recommend. For people that are feeling like burnt out or, like I was, of just being like, I don't know what my next step is. That was just amazing for us to really like create possibilities and just like create a new path and expand our potential too.
Yeah, absolutely. So you say you brought on this partner, like besides like, did you feel like something was missing like that you needed somebody to counter you? Is that why you brought her on? Or, I mean, was that part of it? Or talks about bringing on the partner? Because some people want to, you know, be like, I'm the person who did it and I did this. But, you know, one of my all-time favorite books is Rocket Fuel by EOS, and how they talk about, you know, the balance between the two people. So,
yeah. So, I mean, Marky really balances me out very well. We have a lot of fun working together. So even though I kind of painted 2017 as like sort of a miserable, really difficult year, there was a lot of laughing that year too, because she has a great sense of humor. She's super funny. You know, she's so sometimes has like a dark sense of humor. So like when things were really challenging, like we would just laugh through it, and just like there were lots of jokes about it. And it just like made it more fun. So like when things were going really well, it was super fun to be like celebrating with somebody. And then things were really challenging. We're like, at least we're in this together, you know? And so I really kind of just like meditated on it and thought about it. And I'm like, I don't want to lose her because she's amazing and she wants to be an entrepreneur. So like really, really good employees, like if you don't keep promoting them and building them up and everything, like they will leave. And I just thought about it. I'm like, I want a business partner. I don't want to do this by myself anymore. And she does bring so much to the table that, you know, really balances me out. Like she was really the, you know, spearheaded us in getting way more into our numbers. So I know like, I'm talking a lot about numbers. Like I have to give her so much credit for helping me have a breakthrough and being really like numbers oriented and like setting very specific goals and stuff like that. Because, you know, I set goals in the beginning. I was like, I want to get to 6 figures in year 1. And I did that. And okay, I want to double this year. But then when it came down to like, what's our goal this month? Okay, what's our goal this week? Let's look at like, that was something that she really brought to the table.
Totally get it. I mean, that's, you know, my wife and I work together, and, you know, she's more of the, what's today. Right. Cause like, you know, I love one of the things that you know, is a balance as owning your business is some of us are so far ahead of our business. We like, that's my biggest downfall. I'm so far ahead of things that I don't bring it back to today. And, you know, I'm like, I love being out here, but, and it's kind of nice because I'll say like I'll have an idea or I'll see something and I'll be like, we should do this. And she'll be like, not right now. I'm like, no, I know. Not right now. I know. Cause like I've, you know, traditionally in the past have a habit of like saying like, let's do this. And then like the next day I do it, you know? So she's helped me and being like, okay, let's be like, you know, a little bit more practical about like, let's like think through. And I think I've also seen her like kind of take more risks and stuff like that. Like, so I think we've like rubbed off on each other. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, you know, where are you guys going from here? You know, I mean, like you're how many employees do you have?
Yeah.
Where are you at?
So, so between Marky and I, we currently have 10 employees, you know, plus us. So there's 12 of us. We're bringing on another agent this month, and we're hiring a social selling employee this month or sometime this year. We're starting to recruit for that now. So we're building out our sales and marketing team. And honestly, our goal is to get to 10 million in the next 2 years. We are aggressively scaling and growing now that we've laid a really strong groundwork with the team. We're building out our sales and marketing. So we're just doing a ton of content marketing and thought leadership. And we're just going to, you know, take off like a rocket ship, as that, as that book says.
That's awesome. For someone who's, you know, in their business, maybe they just by themselves and they've got this, maybe a little bit of a fractional team with their VAs and contractors and stuff. Like, what if you had to sit in front of them right now and mentor them, like, what would your main talk be to them?
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, there's a couple different things. So like, I would want to know, okay, what are your revenue streams? Like, how are you bringing in money? Because I think like one mistake people make is they kind of go right to like, I'm going to do all this marketing and audience building, but if you don't have anything to sell to those people, then that marketing is really going to just send people to a bucket that just is constantly leaking out. So like, number one, like, let's make sure you actually have some like good services, products, offerings. Like, what can you sell to people? And then get really clear. Once you have that, get really clear on what you stand for and what your message is, because you are unique and you have thought leadership. So get really clear on what your message is. What can you teach people? What do you stand for? And then you're going to just create a ton of content around that. Like, figure out what platforms you're really going to focus on, whether it's your podcast or if you're a video person or, you're on a specific social media platform, create a system where you are like consistently and persistently marketing and setting yourself apart by, communicating your message and your expertise and just nurturing relationships. Because I think when we look at marketing and we're looking at the number of followers, we get really obsessed about like growing this big audience, but take that time, slow down, and like nurture each and every individual that connects with you. Everyone that follows you, message them, get to know them, ask them questions. People that join your email list in the beginning, when you've got a tiny email list, email each individual person, like really, really build your relationships with those people. I was at 6 figures with 200 people on my email list. So it really does not take a huge online following to actually be making money. So I hope those are some helpful first steps for people.
Yeah. And a lot of everything's so digital right now, it's switched to being so digital. And so, it's out there for your taking. It gets so easy to focus on like, the automation of this, the ease that it can be, but without seeing that it actually takes time. Like the guy I was talking about earlier, I mean, I don't know. Like I just connected with them like 6 months ago.
And people are going to want to hire you and work with you because they just like you, you're going to connect with people and they're going to need what you have. And that's the other thing that's really important to remember. There's these like little lessons I remember early on that I still say to this day, but like people buy when they're ready to buy. I sometimes will have people on my email list for like, I have a sales consultation with somebody in 2 weeks who wrote, "Hey, about your book, I've been on your email list for a really long time." Like, so that's why it's really important to be persistent and to be really authentic too, because, we all have competitors, even in a brand new industry like mine with podcast guesting. There's lots of other people doing it, but people are going to be attracted to your personality, to your take on things, and to your integrity. So you have to just really stick to what your word is, be really honest and consistent with what you're doing. People will be drawn to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to check myself on that. I love business. I love all that stuff, but my best value is not approaching a business problem through business. It's through the frame of, where you're at physically, spiritually, in your relationships and in your mindset. Because
I love that.
If anything else, then, most people, I was actually just writing a post about this, is that most people don't have a business problem. They have something else going on in their life, because if you do have a business problem, go hire a consultant, because the consultant's there to show you tactically how to do it, So.
Oh my gosh, Anthony, I love that so much. And that's the one of the biggest lessons I got from doing Landmark was, I went because a client recommended it to me, and, they're like, "Oh, it helped me make, this much more money in my business." And I was like, cool. And then the whole weekend is like this personal transformation, like getting complete with your family and like all this stuff. And I was like, "What is going on?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, you can't be successful in your business until you're complete in your personal life." So, and I think I love the way you phrase that too, because when people are struggling, whether it's your employees or your team members or other business owners, when people are struggling, it's usually like, where else in your life are you out of integrity? Like when I have clients that say, "Well, this interview thing is not working. I haven't gotten results." I'm like, what else have you given up on? What else have you been quitting before it started working? Because chances are this is your whole life. You constantly give up too soon. And it's a mindset thing to grow business. It's totally mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've gone through the foundation or the forum, and I have a funny story about the advanced course. And I went through the breakthroughs course, and then
same.
And then I was actually going to do self-inspection and leadership, but that was long story.
It's a big commitment. Yeah. So we did Forum Advanced, the breakthrough seminar, and then we did SELP too.
Yeah. So
That's
it was it was an interesting conversation. It was great.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's awesome. When did you do it? What year?
2013.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
So it's been a while. But
that is so
you know,
cool.
I think I'm going to in the future going to do that. So
yeah,
finish
totally.
everything. So,
I always think I'm like, when will we be back to like review the form? Because it's, you know, what I found is it's constantly pulling into practice. It trains your brain to just think like, all right, am I making this mean something? I think I'm just creating a story right now.
Yeah.
It's so helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. So, what other personal development things have you found useful?
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as like transformation, like, you know, Landmark has been the best for me just because I base so much of it. But honestly, all the other personal development stuff that I have found is kind of comes back to the same stuff, like whether it's Tony Robbins or personal development tips that you got from different coaches. It's all kind of the same stuff in different language. So, I mean, for me, like, I, you know, just like health wise, I try to be really conscious about like drinking enough water and like exercising and eating healthy and, you know, staying present with my kids and my family, because I think it really comes back to balance, and stuff like that. So.
Awesome.
Yeah,
for sure. Well, you know, if someone want to get a hold of you, how can we get a hold of you?
Yeah. So our website's interviewconnections.com. We do have a free Facebook group for established business owners who are interested in leveraging podcasting. It's called Guest Expert Profit Labs on Facebook. You can either search that on Facebook or go to interviewconnections.com/group, and that'll redirect you to the Facebook group.
Awesome. Well, we'll put those links to get a hold of you in the show notes, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
This concludes another episode of the Be Battle Ready podcast. If you're looking to put it all together across all the areas of your life and be battle ready, come get connected with powerful leaders in our Be Battle Ready Facebook group, where we will be dropping new battles to win each day.